In the sprawling, fractious landscape of 21st-century American conservatism, where media empires rise from basement podcasts and political influence is measured in viral moments, few figures embody the movement's journey from intellectual insurgency to mainstream combatant, and provoke its most visceral debates, as completely as Charlie Kirk, the baby-faced provocateur who transformed a Facebook page for disgruntled college students into Turning Point USA, a multimedia juggernaut that has relentlessly declared war on the woke left, recalibrated the Republican Party's youth agenda, and positioned itself as a central nervous system for a populist, Trump-aligned right, all while weathering a maelstrom of controversy that labels him, depending on the audience, as either a fearless patriot exposing cultural rot or a merchant of division leveraging grievance for power and profit, a narrative that weaves together the threads of digital-age activism, the potent fusion of politics and entertainment, and the eternal American tension between iconoclasm and institution building, revealing a story not just of one man's ambition but of a movement's metamorphosis. Charlie Kirk, born on October 14, 1993, in Arlington Heights, Illinois, emerged as one of the most polarizing and influential conservative voices of his generation, not through inherited political power or elite institutional backing, but through an early fascination with American history, free market economics, and the cultural direction of the United States, interests that took root during his upbringing in a middle-class family where political discussions were present but not extreme, and where his father worked as an architect while his mother focused on raising the family, giving him a relatively stable foundation from which he began questioning the world around him. As a teenager, Kirk showed a strong inclination toward debate, public speaking, and ideological inquiry, gravitating toward conservative thinkers and libertarian philosophy, particularly the writings and speeches that emphasized individual liberty, constitutional originalism, and skepticism toward government expansion, and while attending high school, he became increasingly vocal about his beliefs, engaging classmates and teachers in discussions that often placed him outside the prevailing political culture of his environment, an experience that sharpened both his rhetorical skills and his sense of ideological opposition. His formative political awakening accelerated during the presidency of Barack Obama, a period that Kirk later described as instrumental in shaping his worldview, as he became critical of what he perceived as government overreach, rising national debt, and cultural shifts within American institutions, and rather than channeling these concerns privately, he chose a public path, writing opinion pieces and giving interviews while still in his teens, gaining early attention when he co-authored an article critical of liberal bias in education that circulated widely in conservative media circles. This exposure brought him into contact with influential donors and activists, most notably Foster Friess, who recognized Kirk's potential as a youthful spokesperson for conservative ideas and provided financial backing that would become crucial to the next phase of his life. In 2012, shortly after graduating high school, Charlie Kirk made a defining decision that would shape his future trajectory when he declined to pursue a traditional college education, instead opting to build a movement directly, believing that universities had become hostile to free expression and ideological diversity, and it was from this conviction that Turning Point USA was born in 2012, an organization Kirk founded at just 18 years old with the stated mission of promoting free markets, limited government, and conservative values among high school and college students across the United States. Turning Point USA initially began as a modest operation focused on campus activism, student chapters, and provocative messaging designed to challenge what Kirk and his supporters viewed as left-wing dominance in academia, but its growth was rapid and strategic, leveraging social media, viral videos, and attention-grabbing tactics such as the controversial Professor Watchlist, which cataloged educators accused of promoting political bias in the classroom, a project that drew fierce criticism from academics and civil liberties groups while simultaneously elevating Kirk's national profile. As Turning Point USA expanded, so did Charlie Kirk's role as a public figure, transitioning from organizer to full-time commentator, speaker, and media personality, delivering speeches across college campuses, conservative conferences, and political events, where his youthful energy, confrontational style, and simplified framing of complex issues resonated strongly with a segment of young conservatives who felt alienated by mainstream culture. While critics accused him of spreading misinformation, oversimplification, and inflammatory rhetoric, Kirk's rise coincided with the emergence of a new digital-first political ecosystem, and he proved adept at navigating it, using platforms like Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and later podcasts to bypass traditional media gatekeepers and speak directly to millions of followers, building an online presence that transformed him into not just an activist but a brand, where his persona, confident, combative, and unapologetically partisan, became inseparable from the causes he championed. His prominence increased dramatically during the 2016 U.S. presidential election, as he became an outspoken supporter of Donald Trump, aligning himself with the populist conservative wave that reshaped the Republican Party. And although initially skeptical of Trump's rhetoric and style, Kirk eventually embraced the movement wholeheartedly, viewing it as a necessary disruption to political norms, a stance that positioned him at the center of a generational shift within conservative politics. Following Trump's election, Charlie Kirk's influence expanded further, as he gained access to high-profile political figures, spoke at major conservative gatherings including CAC, and was frequently invited onto television programs and podcasts as a representative of Gen Z conservatism, a label he both embraced and strategically cultivated. During this period, Turning Point USA grew into a multi-million-dollar organization with extensive donor networks, national conferences, youth leadership programs, and spin-off initiatives, though its growth was not without controversy, as reports of internal disputes, allegations of financial mismanagement, and questions about organizational transparency surfaced over the years, prompting both internal reforms and external scrutiny. Yet none significantly slowed Kirk's momentum or diminished his public visibility. Intellectually, Charlie Kirk positioned himself as a defender of Western civilization, American exceptionalism, and Judeo-Christian values, often framing cultural debates as existential battles between tradition and progressive ideology. And this framing became central to his messaging on issues such as immigration, education, gender identity, race, and media bias, topics on which he adopted firm stances that energized supporters while intensifying opposition, making him a frequent target of protests, campus shutdowns, and online criticism, experiences that he frequently used to reinforce his narrative of conservative voices being silenced in public spaces. Kirk's speaking style, often criticized for prioritizing rhetoric over nuance, nonetheless proved effective in mobilizing audiences, particularly through short-form content and debate clips that circulated widely online, contributing to his reputation as a culture war strategist rather than a traditional policy intellectual, a distinction he appeared comfortable with as he focused on influence rather than academic validation. As his platform expanded, Kirk diversified his media presence by launching podcasts and long-form discussion shows, most notably The Charlie Kirk Show, where he addressed current events, interviewed political allies, and offered daily commentary, further solidifying his role as a central node in conservative media. And through these channels he consistently emphasized themes of nationalism, skepticism of global institutions, opposition to progressive social movements, and a belief that American society was undergoing moral and cultural decline, arguments that resonated deeply with listeners who shared his concerns. His critics, however, accused him of promoting divisive narratives, misrepresenting data, and contributing to political polarization, particularly during moments of national crisis such as the COVID-19 pandemic and the 2020 presidential election, periods during which Kirk questioned public health mandates, election integrity, and institutional authority, aligning himself with broader conservative skepticism and fueling debates that extended far beyond traditional party lines. Following the events of January 6, 2021, Charlie Kirk remained a vocal defender of Trump and a critic of what he described as a politically motivated crackdown on conservative dissent, positioning himself as part of a resistance against what he viewed as an expanding alliance between government power, corporate interests, and progressive ideology, a stance that further entrenched his influence among supporters while intensifying condemnation from opponents. Despite the controversies, Kirk continued to expand his organizational footprint, launching initiatives aimed at high school students, faith-based communities, and minority outreach programs, asserting that conservative principles transcended race and background, though critics challenged the authenticity and impact of these efforts. Personally, Charlie Kirk cultivated an image of disciplined ambition, often speaking about the importance of faith, family, and personal responsibility, and in his personal life he married Erica Franceva, a businesswoman and former Miss Arizona USA, an event that garnered attention within conservative media circles and reinforced his public narrative of traditional values. Over time, Kirk authored books articulating his worldview, blending autobiography with ideological argument, positioning himself not only as an activist but as a thought leader within the modern conservative movement. And while scholars and analysts debated the depth and originality of his ideas, few disputed his effectiveness as a mobilizer and communicator in an era defined by attention economics and digital influence. As the political landscape continued to evolve, Charlie Kirk adapted his messaging to remain relevant, increasingly framing his mission as a generational struggle, urging young Americans to reject what he described as cultural pessimism and reclaim national identity, a call that resonated strongly with those seeking certainty in a fragmented media environment. Today, Charlie Kirk stands as a defining figure of contemporary American conservatism, emblematic of a new model of political power built not through elected office but through media dominance, organizational networks, and ideological branding, a figure whose influence is measured not only by policy outcomes but by cultural impact, and whether viewed as a courageous defender of free speech or a controversial provocateur contributing to division. His story reflects the broader transformation of political activism in the digital age, where ideas spread at the speed of algorithms, movements are built on viral moments, and individuals can shape national conversations long before they reach middle age. And as his career continues to unfold, Charlie Kirk remains both a symbol and a participant in the ongoing battle over America's identity, values, and future, a figure whose legacy will be judged not only by supporters and critics but by how history interprets the turbulent era in which he rose to prominence.